We might be reading 2 tonight. Tessa, it's apparently I can be heard on live. this is Angela. Hi. Just double checking if we're live. Hello. I'm Angela, and this is Reader's Corner, and I'm very articulate this evening. Hope you all are doing okay. It is our Monday weekly activity where I, as a voice actor and someone obsessed with reading out loud, reads a story to you. I am very, very excited to be continuing our second series of stories. One might call it season 2, but that's not really what a thing. Read us a song. I will just read lyrics. It'll be very Shatner-esque. But what I'm actually going to be doing today is continuing our wonderful, wonderful series of short stories written by Oscar Wilde. I am very excited to get a chance to continue reading these fairy tales. And yeah, so the first one was really good. What I seem to have encountered here, we're going to see how it goes, but a couple of these stories seem like they're on the slightly shorter side. Not by much, though. So we may end up with a slightly longer episode today or a slightly shorter episode today, but we'll do our best. I do want to make sure you guys feel like you're getting your time's worth out of things. So I don't want you to feel like you're not getting a full story. So if something goes a little long, then we will just have to make do. Alrighty. So we're going to be starting our second story from The Happy Prince and Other Tales by Oscar Wilde. It is available, it's a public domain story. It's available on Project Gutenberg, so gutenberg.org. You can get the book there. You can see the link down at the bottom of the screen. I highly recommend you check it out. I am a fan of many of Oscar Wilde's works, and as with our last story, this is a terribly British tale. Excuse me. All right. So we're going to start post-haste with our next story in the series. It is called The Nightingale and the Rose. Actually, first things first, get a little bit out of the way while we wait a little bit for some people to jump in. I am super organized today. Reader's Corner, we are a member of the Nerdsmith Network, and this show, along with several of our special event shows that we run every week, are running specifically to raise a little money for some of our fellow members of our Nerdsmith creator community who have lost jobs and wages because of quarantine measures and stay at home. We are trying to help give them a little bit of a leg up while they are, this is going to be a mixed metaphor, give them a leg up while they're working to get back on their feet. It kind of works. But anyway, we've been giving what we can every week to try to help them out, and our audience and viewership have been so incredibly generous by pitching in along with us to directly donate to our creators. Anything that is tipped to this show via our Streamlabs link, it's streamlabs.com/wearenerdsmith, which you can also find in the tip this show underneath this page, underneath the video. But anything that gets donated during the show tonight will be going into the pool that we send out weekly to those creators who are most in need of a little bit of help. They put out amazing content every week, free for you to access, and it is beyond amazing that we have viewers, not just people in our network, but people who watch the network and support the network, chipping in to make some other people's lives a little easier during this time. So, as always, thank you so much for your generosity, and also just thank you so much for joining us tonight and for tuning in. Now, with that said, we shall begin. We are going to start with our story, The Nightingale and the Rose, by Oscar Wilde. She said that she would dance with me if I brought her red roses, cried the young student. But in all my garden there is no red rose. From her nest in the holm oak tree, the nightingale heard him, and she looked out through the leaves and wondered. No red rose in all my garden, he cried, and his beautiful eyes filled with tears. Ah, on what little things does happiness depend! I have read all that the wise men have written, and all the secrets of philosophy are mine, yet for want of a red rose is my life made wretched. Here at last is a true lover, said the nightingale. Night after night I have sung of him, though I knew him not. Night after night I have told his story to the stars, and now I see him. His hair is dark as the hyacinth blossom, and his lips as red as the rose of his desire, but passion has made his face like pale ivory, and sorrow has set her seal upon his brow. The prince gives a ball tomorrow night, murmured the young student, and my love will be of the company. If I bring her a red rose, she will dance with me till dawn. If I bring her a red rose, I shall hold her in my arms, and she will lean her head upon my shoulder, and her hand will be clasped in mine. But there is no red rose in my garden, so I shall sit lonely, and she will pass me by. She will have no heed of me, and my heart will break. Here indeed is the true lover, said the nightingale. What I sing of he suffers. What is joy to me, to him is pain. Surely love is a wonderful thing. It is more precious than emeralds and dearer than fine opals. Pearls and pomegranates cannot buy it, nor is it set forth in the marketplace. It may not be purchased of the merchants, nor can it be weighed out in the balance for gold. The musicians will sit in their gallery, said the young student, and play upon their stringed instruments, and my love will dance to the sound of the harp and violin. She will dance so lightly that her feet will not touch the floor, and the courtiers in their gay dresses will throng around her, but with me she will not dance, for I have no red rose to give her. And he flung himself down on the grass and buried his face in his hands and wept. Why is he weeping? Asked a little green lizard as he ran past him with his tail in the air. Why, indeed, said a butterfly who was fluttering about after a sunbeam. Why, indeed, whispered a daisy to his neighbor in a soft, low voice. He is weeping for a red rose, said the nightingale. For a red rose, they cried. How very ridiculous! And the little lizard, who was something of a cynic, laughed outright. But the nightingale understood the secret of the student's sorrow, and she sat silent in the oak tree and thought about the mystery of love. Suddenly she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She passed through the grove like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed across the garden. In the center of the grass plot was standing a beautiful rose tree, and when she saw it, she flew over to it and lit upon a spray. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are white, it answered, as white as the foam of the sea, and whiter than the snow upon the mountain. But go to my brother who grows round the old sundial, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing round the old sundial. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are yellow, it answered, as yellow as the hair of the mermaiden who sits upon an amber throne, and yellower than the daffodil that blooms in the meadow before the mower comes with his scythe. But go to my brother who grows beneath the student's window, and perhaps he will give you what you want. So the nightingale flew over to the rose tree that was growing beneath the student's window. Give me a red rose, she cried, and I will sing you my sweetest song. But the tree shook its head. My roses are red, it answered, as red as the feet of the dove, and redder than the great fans of coral that wave and wave in the ocean cavern. But the winter has chilled my veins, and the frost has nipped my buds, and the storm has broken my branches, and I shall have no roses at all this year. One red rose is all I want, cried the nightingale. Only one red rose? Is there no way by which I could get it? There is a way, answered the tree, but it is so terrible that I dare not tell it to you. Tell it to me, said the nightingale. I am not afraid. If you want a red rose, said the tree, you must build it out of music by moonlight, and stain it with your own heart's blood. You must sing to me with your breast against a thorn. All night long you must sing to me, and the thorn must pierce your heart, and your lifeblood must flow into my veins and become mine. Death is a great price to pay for a red rose, cried the nightingale, and life is very dear to all. It is pleasant to sit in the green wood and to watch the sun in his chariot of gold and the moon in her chariot of pearl. Sweet is the scent of the hawthorn, and sweet are the bluebells that hide in the valley, and the heather that blows on the hill. Yet love is better than life, and what is the heart of a bird compared to the heart of a man? So she spread her brown wings for flight and soared into the air. She swept over the garden like a shadow, and like a shadow she sailed through the grove. The young student was still lying on the grass where she had left him, and the tears were not yet dry in his beautiful eyes. Be happy, cried the nightingale. Be happy. You shall have your red rose. I will build it out of music by moonlight and stain it with my own heart's blood. All that I ask of you in return is that you will be a true lover. For love is wiser than philosophy, though she is wise, and mightier than power, though he is mighty. Flame-colored are his wings, and colored like flame is his body. His lips are sweet as honey, and his breath is like frankincense. The student looked up from the grass and listened, but he could not understand what the nightingale was saying to him, for he only knew the things that were written down in books. But the oak tree understood, and felt sad, for he was very fond of the little nightingale who had built her nest in his branches. Sing me one last song, he whispered. I shall feel very lonely when you are gone. So the nightingale sang to the oak tree, and her voice was like water bubbling from a silver jar. When she had finished her song, the student got up and pulled a notebook and a lead pencil out of his pocket. She has form, he said to himself as he walked away through the grove. That cannot be denied to her, but has she got feeling? I am afraid not. In fact, she is like most artists. She is all style without any sincerity. In fact, she would not sacrifice herself for others. She thinks merely of music, and everybody knows the arts are selfish. Still, it must be admitted that she has some beautiful notes in her voice. What a pity that they do not mean anything or do any practical good. And he went into his room and laid down on his little pallet bed and began to think of his love, and after a time he fell asleep. And when the moon shone in the heavens, the nightingale flew to the rose tree and set her breast against the thorn. All night long she sang with her breast against the thorn, and the cold crystal moon leaned down and listened. All night long she sang, and the thorn went deeper and deeper, and her lifeblood ebbed away from her. The first and second book, both about birds dying. She sang first of the birth of love in the heart of a boy and a girl, and the topmost spray of the rose tree there blossomed a marvelous rose, petal following petal, as song followed song. Pale was it at first, as the mist that hangs over the river, pale as the feet of the morning, and silver as the wings of the dawn, as the shadow of a rose in a mirror of silver, as the shadow of a rose in a water pool, so was the rose that blossomed on the topmost spray of the tree. But the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn. Press closer, little nightingale, cried the tree, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and louder grew her song, for she sang of the birth of passion in the soul of a man and a maid. And a delicate flush of pink came into the leaves of the rose, like the flush in the face of the bridegroom when he kisses the lips of the bride. But the thorn had not yet reached her heart, so the rose's heart remained white, for only a nightingale's heart's blood can crimson the heart of a rose. And the tree cried to the nightingale to press closer against the thorn, or the day will come before the rose is finished. So the nightingale pressed closer against the thorn, and the thorn touched her heart, and a fierce pang of pain shot through her. Bitter, bitter was the pain, and wilder, wilder grew her song, for she sang of the love that is perfected by death, of the love that dies not in the tomb. And the marvelous rose became crimson like the rose of the eastern sky. Crimson was the girdle of petals, and crimson as a ruby was the heart. But the nightingale's voice grew fainter, and her little wings began to beat, and a film came over her eyes. Fainter and fainter grew her song, and she felt something choking in her throat. Then she gave one last burst of music. The white moon heard it, and she forgot the dawn and lingered on in the sky. The red rose heard it, and it trembled all over and opened its petals to the cold morning air. Echo bore it to her purple cavern in the hills and woke the sleeping shepherds from their dreams. It floated through the reeds of the river, and they carried its message to the sea. Look, look, cried the tree. The rose is finished now. But the nightingale made no answer, for she was lying dead in the long grass with the thorn in her heart. And at noon the student opened his window and looked out. Why, what a wonderful piece of luck, he cried. Here is a red rose. I have never seen any rose like it in all my life. It is so beautiful that I am sure it has a long Latin name. And he leaned down and plucked it. Then he put his hat on and ran up to the professor's house with the rose in his hand. The daughter of the professor was sitting in the doorway winding blue silk on a reed, and her little dog was lying at her feet. You said that you would dance with me if I brought you a red rose, cried the student. Here is the reddest rose in all the world. You will wear it tonight next to your heart, and we will dance together. And as we dance together, it will tell you how I love you. But the girl frowned. I'm afraid it will not go with my dress, she answered. And besides, the Chamberlain's nephew has sent me some real jewels. Everybody knows that jewels cost far more than flowers. Well, upon my word, you are very ungrateful, said the student angrily, and he threw the rose into the street, where it fell into the gutter, and a cartwheel went over it. Ungrateful, said the girl. I tell you what, you are very rude, and after all, who are you? Only a student? Why, I don't believe you have even silver buckles to your shoes, as the Chamberlain's nephew has. And she got up from her chair and went into the house. What a silly thing love is, said the student as he walked away. It is not as half useful as logic, for it does not prove anything. It is always telling one of things that are not going to happen, and making one believe things that are not true. In fact, it is quite impractical, and as in this age to be practical in it is everything, I shall go back to philosophy and study metaphysics. So he returned to his room and pulled out a great dusty book and began to read. And this is the end of that story. Yeah. I feel like this would be a good book club discussion, because I'm sure there's a lot going on in there that is worth discussing in terms of criticism. As I said, these next two stories are very short, so I am going to go on to the next one and hoping that birds don't die in this one. such I'm like story blocking her. I didn't mean to. Tessa is anger. Okay, so we're gonna read the next one. We're gonna read The Selfish Giant. So again, by Oscar Wilde. Every afternoon, as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke out into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. One day, the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend the Cornish ogre and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he had said all that he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I will not allow nobody to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board. Trespassers will be prosecuted. He was a very selfish giant. The poor children now had nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander around the high wall when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside. How happy we were there, they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were little blossoms and little birds. Don't you dare threaten the birds again, Oscar Wilde. Only in the garden of the selfish giant it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it, as there were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, and when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. "Spring has forgotten this garden," they cried, "so we will live here all year round." The snow covered up the grass with her great white cloak, and frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the North Wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he roared all day about the garden and blew the chimney pots down. "This is a delightful spot," he said. "We must ask the hail on a visit." So the hail came. Every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran round and round the garden as fast as he could go. He was dressed in grey, and his breath was like ice. "I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming," said the selfish giant, as he sat at the window and looked out at his cold white garden. "I hope there will be a change in the weather." But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. "He is too selfish," she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind, and the hail, and the frost, and the snow dancing about through the trees. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird sing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased roaring, and a delicious perfume came to him through the open casement. "Oh, I believe the spring has come at last," said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? He saw a most wonderful sight. Through the little hole in the wall the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. Through the little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. Commas are very important. In every tree that he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene, only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too tiny. The giant's heart melted as he looked out. "Oh, how selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever." He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming, and the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossom, and the birds came and sang on it, and the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant, and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "Where is your little companion?" he said. The boy I put in the tree." The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "Oh, we don't know," answered the children. "He has gone away." "You must tell him to be sure and come here tomorrow," said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon when school was over, the children came and played with the giant, but the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his first little friend, and often spoke of him. "How I would like to see him," he used to say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. "I have so many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew it was merely the spring asleep and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were all golden, and silver fruit hung down from them, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child. When he was quite close, his face grew red with anger, and said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palm of the children's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. "Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me, that I may take my big sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying under the tree, all covered in white blossoms. Oscar Wilde's shifty. He keeps doing that. That was a... The end. Sorry. So yeah. These are not super happy, but we assume that. I mean, it's Oscar Wilde. Nothing's like super happy. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for that in-depth, insightful reading of the story. All right. So those were two stories since they were quite short. Um, I believe there may be only one left. Oh no, there are two left. All right. So that was a pair of stories from The Happy Prince and Other Tales by Oscar Wilde. We will be reading the next story, The Devoted Friend. I will pre-read just in case. I would like to try to find happier ones, but it's okay. Yes, everything is birds and Jesus in this short story. He was going through a phase, apparently. All right, so that was our reader's corner for the day. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I tried to inject as much ridiculousness into some of the characters as I could. And we'll keep going with our reading. We're here every Monday, 6 o'clock Pacific, 9 o'clock Eastern, and you'll find me reading all sorts of stuff. If you have suggestions for short stories specifically, thank you, dear. I appreciate that. If you have ideas for short stories, especially if they are in public domain, please let me know. I would love to accumulate a small repertoire of stories, and I think that would be quite fun. So, yes, in the public domain, if you look at Gutenberg.org, it's an excellent place to look. Ideally, short stories. I'd love to keep it down to a half an hour to an hour, partly just for the sake of my voice. But yes, so please let me know if you have ideas. I would love to know, and you can tweet us at We Are Nerdsmith if you have those ideas. I'd love to hear them. That is all I have for today. Really quick review of your week. If you are a frequent or new viewer to Nerdsmith, we have a number of shows coming up this week. We have our Reader's Corner here on Monday. On Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific, we have Shenanigans, our Spelljammer campaign. We had an off week last week, and we are hopefully coming back this week. We'll see you tomorrow for our Lost in Space exploration adventure. And then on Wednesday, we have me with the Nerdsmith Power Hour. I am going to attempt to do a little crafting on Wednesday, a little bit of actual physical crafting. I'm going to try an experimental setup where I use my phone as an extra webcam. We're going to see how that works. But I have a lot of like physical crafts I want to start doing, and I've got all the materials, so why not spend an hour showing you guys stuff? Thank you so much for the follow, Doc Rimbo. Appreciate it. And you'll get pinged when we go live with our new shows, with our shows every week. And let's see, Wednesday is a Power Hour. Thursday we have No Brainer, hosted by our delightful Archwizard, Rainbow Archwizard Matthew Siebert, our bar trivia aficionado. It hosts a head-to-head trivia show with Nerdsmith creators and friends, and it is very delightful. If you tip the show during the stream, you can affect the, let's call it, the legibility of the questions, just to throw a little bit of a wrench on things. And then on Friday, we have, I believe, Fireside Chat. I will have to double check, but as many Fridays as we can, Chad, our resident GM of the Chaotic Goodness podcast and also a licensed mental health specialist, talks about keeping your mental health in check and cared for during this time. So he does little talks about certain mental health topics. You can ask questions on our Discord channel or directly messaging us here on Twitch if you have questions, and Chad does his best to field them. And then on Friday night, we have Nerdsmith Sings Our Heart Out, which is our weekly karaoke stream with hosted by myself, and then with a rotating cast of some wonderful friends here at the Nerdsmith, in the Nerdsmith creator community, that like to sing and take requests from you in exchange for tips that also, like this show, go directly towards some of our creators who are most in need of help because of lost jobs and wages the last few months. So that is one of the things we love to do with our karaoke for a little bit of good. And Saturday we have Homebrew Studio, also featuring Matthew Siebert. And Matthew, I just realized that we host half the shows on the live streams now. We should have like a morning show billboard with us back to back. Um, anyway, we hope that you will follow us here on Twitch or on Twitter to get to get the updates for when we go live with shows. If we have anything new, we will let you know via Twitter, most likely. And yeah, so if you want, this story that we just read will be available on VOD and will be up on YouTube soon, probably in the next couple days. And yeah, so I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. I look forward to continuing to read stories for better or worse uh, for you. And as I said, please have a wonderful rest of your evening. Please have a great week. I hope you have an okay week at least. And yeah, that's all I've got for you today. So hopefully see you on Monday, next Monday, or around the network throughout the week, or on our Discord channel where we try to create a safe and happy and relaxing environment for everybody to chill and talk about your favorite shows or whatever you want to talk about, because we are nothing if not multifaceted as far as what we're nerdy about. All right, so that's all from me tonight. I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope to see you soon. Have a great week. Have a great night. And please, please do me a favor and be good to each other. See you later. Bye bye.